record.
Hello, everybody. We are back with another exhilarating podcast for you here today. I am Marshall Stovall. We got here with me my co-host Omar Rashan Sodapop Borja. Today we got some pretty interesting topics for you. This might be on the shorter end of our podcast, but it's better short and sweet than quality over quantity kind of thing. All right. So what we're going to be talking about today, Omar, have you ever been on a tropical vacation?
Jamaica actually. I went to Jamaica the summer of my summer after first grade or before. Yeah, summer after first grade. I went to Jamaica.
Okay, and you liked it, I imagine, right?
No, I loved it. I want to go back.
Everybody loves a tropical vacation. What is the only place in the U.S., I believe, that is within the equator line?
Florida, Hawaii, either one of those.
Hawaii. You know who loves Hawaii? FCS schools. Wait, everybody loves Hawaii, but specifically FCS schools love Hawaii. Omar, maybe you want to explain that one a little bit for us.
Yeah, so let's see. So just doing some web surfing like I usually do in this down bad phase. Just looking at FB schedules, and I came across Hawaii. I like to look at Hawaii's non-conference schedules because it's always interesting who they bring to the island, especially to who they're going to bring, given that the Aloha Bowl, the Aloha Stadium, will not be functional for the next few years or possibly ever. And I found that an interesting trend where you have Duquesne visiting in 2022 out of the Northeast Conference. And we'll talk about these schools a little bit more because for casual fans, those might not be household names unless you like the history of college football. Albany in 2023 will come to visit the 50th state, and then in 2028, a game that was supposed to happen this year, 2020 before the pandemic happened, Fordham is going to visit Hawaii in 2028. And I'll say, if I am still single by 2028, or if I'm just married, looks like the honeymoon, or I'm just going to take a single man's trip to Hawaii for Hawaii versus Fordham because I love me some Patriot League football.
Got a boys trip in the works for 2028?
Yeah, maybe a boys trip. Again, like I said, if I'm married, maybe not. Might have to hold off on having kids until after 2028.
Maybe it's a family trip.
Maybe a family trip. Those are expensive. That's quite expensive. And then they'll have to ask, why are we going to Hawaii in the second week or during Labor Day weekend? And I'll say, stop asking questions. But no, it's just an interesting phenomenon, especially considering that these schools for paycheck, like they don't generally go far for paycheck games. Like FCS teams generally don't go far distances for paycheck games. Especially like Duquesne. This is their second visit. This would be their second visit since 2018. And I remember seeing in Phil Steele's college football preview, which is very great, probably the most comprehensive look at each college football season beforehand. It was their first trip since west of the Rocky Mountains since 1947, the 2018 game against Hawaii. So why start now, you ask? And I want to ask Marshall too, just I guess to kick off the discussion. Do you think this gives a recruiting edge to these Northeastern FCS schools, just like these one-off trips to Hawaii, like these temporary boosts?
You know what? I think if you could make it somewhat recurring, I would say yes. I'd say it's difficult to say, say you're a coach recruiting, at Fordham, you're not going to tell some recruit now, yeah, in 2028, we're going to be playing in Hawaii. It's like, unless, that's kind of like a normal thing, right? Maybe you're like, oh, every 2 years we go to Hawaii, we'll get some cool trips in there. And if it's between, Fordham, I think you said it best, I think, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? You were like, yeah, if you're a recruit in Pennsylvania and Pitt doesn't want anything to do with you and West Virginia doesn't want anything to do with you, what's going to sway you? Maybe that little trip will sway you to one FCS over the other or one D2 over the other, whatever it may be. So I think, but it's got to be somewhat regular. It's going to be hard to say, yeah, in the last, in the last game of our senior year, we're going to be in Hawaii. It's like, okay, that's like 4 years out. That's a little bit long. Like maybe if there's some other incremental, factors at play, those could overpower, one big trip at the end. I think that could be true. Like if you had maybe a little better facilities, another school would be swayed over that. But if you're going to Hawaii, once every 2 years, maybe regularly, or maybe like you're going to some different tropical locations, maybe you're playing a kickoff game in the Bahamas one year, maybe then you're playing in Hawaii the next year, maybe then, something like that. Like if it's a little bit regular, I can see it swaying people. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with that. It just gets expensive too, going to Hawaii like every few years. Like I'm not even sure why Duquesne is doing it after they did in 2018 while they're returning 4 years. But I mean, it should be cool nonetheless. If you look at Duquesne, take a further look at the Dukes. Like they have been scheduling very aggressively, like in the past month. They added Ohio, like a regional opponent, but still an FBS opponent. Last week, I believe, they added TCU, a trip to Texas,
Okay.
which is an easy trip to make and not exactly like what we're talking about in terms of tropical, but very recently this week, Duquesne they scheduled a game against Florida State in week 0 to go down to Tallahassee. So in 2022, they'll be visiting Tallahassee and Hawaii in the span of a month, in the span of, I think, 3 weeks even. So maybe there's like a little like bit of recurrence right there, but I think maybe more. I think it sort of brings like the fans into it a little bit more because these teams, like especially like the Northeast Conference, they don't really have like generally like big followings. And I'm not gonna say it because it's an FCS, like because it's FCS, they don't have followings general. I'm not gonna say that because there are teams with great followings. Went to North Dakota State game at Target Field Labor Day weekend, and stadium was almost full. Like they crossed state lines to fill that stadium. Like there are FCS teams with huge fan bases, like North Dakota State, James Madison, but that's like the exception and not really the norm.
Yeah, I think you know what? Now that I think about it more, I think if you can perhaps promise to your recruits that you'll be playing in the biggest stadiums, that could be a draw. Because I'm like thinking back to it now, like you start scrolling through maybe some different athletes like Instagram pages, right? You're looking at a smaller school. Where are these athletes always posting? They're always posting and flexing up when they get to these bigger school stadiums, right? Like, I mean, nothing wrong with that at all. Like, I'm just saying it's kind of true. And so it's like there is definitely an enjoyment factor. Like maybe you're a coach, you're sitting in someone's living room and you can say, yeah, next year you'll be able to play at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Year afterwards, we're going to go play Notre Dame. Year after that, we're going to go play in Hawaii, right? And so it's like if you get cool locations to go to, I think that may be able to tip the scale. Because if you're getting exposure on a bigger scale like that, that's going to be what the recruits want. They want something, a little bit of exposure, right? And there's definitely going to be scouts at an Alabama game, at a Georgia game, at any real SEC, Big 12, like with those big programs, they pull the scouts. You're going to get some exposure. So that could definitely be a little bit of a selling point, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, just looking at I guess these individual cases as well, just like the sort of like the context with that each team resides in currently. And I forgot to mention this one earlier, but also Colgate scheduled a game with Stanford for 2022 Labor Day weekend, which is it's random because you have opposite ends
You
of
may
the
pull that. You
spectrum.
may pull that mic a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, forgot. Yeah, so I was saying before, like I forgot to mention Colgate in 2022 scheduling a game against Stanford on Labor Day weekend. So you have like two opposite ends of the spectrum: high upstate New York going all the way to Silicon Valley for Labor Day weekend when the weather is still arguably nice as it is year round there. So, but the context that these schools reside in, like you look at Duquesne in the Northeast Conference, like that's like they're definitely a basketball school because they're Olympic sports residing in the Atlantic 10, which is constantly a multi-bid conference. In 2014, I think they had 6 bids out of 14 teams go to the NCAA tournament, which is like that's like the gold standard for the Atlantic 10.
That's the gold standard for any conference.
Any mid-major, like for me, like I see that, and I've been calling the Atlantic 10 the poor man's Big East because like just being up here on a weekend, am I gonna spend $35 to go to St. John's and Madison Square Garden, or am I gonna spend $10 to go to a Fordham game at the historic Rose Hill Gym? I chose Fordham on a couple of occasions, and it's not a bad environment. It's a very historical environment and very kind of reverent. So poor man's Big East, but I digress. Duquesne living in the Northeast Conference for a college for football. So the Northeast Conference hadn't had a playoff bid until 2010, and they had been a football conference since 96, a Division I AA conference since 96. And so there's 14 years where they didn't have a playoff bid, which kind of shows how football is regarded in that conference and sort of that reputation that it has. And no one's really made a deep run in the playoffs. You'll have the occasional team winning the first round, beating a Patriot League team, but no one really makes deep runs out of that conference. So you can't really like say, hey, we're going to do huge things out of the Northeast Conference for like a school like Duquesne. You look at the Patriot League, some like a conference we looked back at a couple of weeks ago, how they have a constant problem in terms of stacking up nationally, where there's a lot of parity. Anyone can realistically win the league every year. But for every year that there's a team like the 2018 Colgate team, where this shirt came from, actually, the Colgate Bicentennial, the team that allowed only 35 points against FCS opponents that won their first round game. There's teams like 2017, I think it was Lehigh, that go 5-6 and make the playoffs, or middling teams. So again, you can't really make that promise. You can say like, oh, you'll get an outstanding education at Colgate, the College of the Holy Cross in the Seven Hills of Worcester, Massachusetts. Sorry, I had to put that in there. But you can't really say like, okay, we're gonna make like deep runs in the playoffs, and you're gonna be playing elite competition. Going on to Albany, you could say that, but then again, the CAA, if the Missouri Valley Conference is the SEC of FCS football, the CAA is like the Big Ten, where there's a lot of parity every year. But you have like James Madison is like the Ohio State, where North Dakota State's Alabama, the Ohio State of FCS, and there's also a bunch of teams that are very competitive. Like Maine made a run to the semifinals in 2018. New Hampshire's been very competitive. Albany's a late bloomer to the CAA, so maybe that boost kind of helps them out. But I think in all factors here, even with Colgate, Fordham, Albany, and Duquesne, that trip to like Hawaii, that trip to Silicon Valley might be able to win some recruiting battles, even if it's just a little bit. Occasionally, maybe like for maybe a couple of recruits a year to have these like games in very sweet destinations, very good warm weather destinations.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I agree.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll just have to see how recruiting comes long term. But I will say, I have the window pulled up. I remember sitting down, as I mentioned earlier, in Rose Hill Gym, watching Fordham lose yet another game in basketball to Duquesne, I think it was. They put up on the video board, they put up an advertisement for the sweet travel package for the Rams in Hawaii, where they showed the logo, the Rams logo with a lei on its neck. It was very gimmicky. But this is a sweet package for the fans. Like, I think it'll rejuvenate fan interest, like to have a package like this. So for $165, you could have gotten this if you went to the Hawaii trip that would have happened in 2020. A welcome reception at the Waikiki Beach Marriott on Wednesday, September 9th. A Pearl Harbor tour at the Pearl Harbor National Museum the next day on Thursday the 10th. A private luau at the Diamond Head Luau that same night. A pregame reception at a restaurant on September 12th, game day. And then transportation to or from Pearl Harbor to the pregame reception and then back to the hotel after the game for $165. Of course, like airfare would be separately, but I think that's a sweet deal, and I think that'll get a lot of fans on board.
A steal, dude. Dude, if you ever been, anyone that been to Hawaii knows, for that luau alone, you could end up paying $160 per person. Like truly.
Yeah, I think honestly, like if this game would have happened with the luau and everything, there might have been some extramarital entanglements between Fordham old grads and Hawaii locals. Like, just a bold prediction.
What?
I don't know, man. Like, I think Fordham University would have gotten some people's marriages in trouble with this travel package. Some people would have gotten carried away.
What are you talking about? You saying you're gonna go to Hawaii on a boys trip and just all bets are off? Happens in Hawaii stays in Hawaii. What are you going on about there, kid? Jesus Christ.
Hey, I'm just saying, like, crazy things happen in Hawaii, and like people.
Yeah, well, now I know where your wife's never gonna let you go.
Hey, that's not true. That's not true.
Hey, as a member, I'm gonna get up there to give a toast, and for the toast, I'm gonna have on my phone this podcast, and I'm gonna put that right there and say, "Never allow Omar in Hawaii for this reason." I'll play that right there.
As a member of the Faithful Black Man Association, I will not let that happen. Never.
Oh my god!
It happened to others, but not.
Well, Omar, all bets are off in Hawaii, apparently. So,
hey, I'm just saying it's a possibility. I'm not saying it's gonna happen. It's a possibility, though. But
I guess I can't argue with that qualification. I guess
We'll change topics then. So in lieu of the Northeast Conference not having a auto bid to the FCS playoffs until 2010, they did have a bowl game in late November called the Gridiron Classic, played at conference sites, and it never really drew well. But this, in conjunction with me finding in my free time and probably in the time where I should have been working, really finding out that Eastern Kentucky out of the Ohio Valley Conference had a bowl game of themselves, and probably the most I guess unwatched and low-key bowl game of this year. They had the Opportunity Bowl, sponsored by the Richmond, Kentucky, where this university is, by the Richmond, Kentucky Board of Tourism, in honor of a former athletics office worker who had passed away due to cancer that went to Western Carolina, in honor of her. And I thought, that's kind of a good idea, like to have a small city's like tourism sponsor or tourism board sponsor a bowl game for teams that have all right seasons. Or like teams in the Northeast, or even like in Montana, the Big Sky, in any place that gets pretty crummy and late in the fall, to like have a bowl game at a nice destination. And I mean, a couple sites I have in mind are like Stetson out in Florida, out in southern Florida. Maybe one of the maybe I don't know how Flagstaff gets in the late November. I assume it gets kind of snowy.
Yeah, it is pretty cold there. Yeah.
Okay, so forget Northern Arizona, but like UC Davis, Sacramento State, there's like a couple of programs that could say, hey, if we don't make the playoffs, let's have this on-campus bowl and invite, say, like a team like Holy Cross or a team like Maine down and have their fans have a ball on the beach. So I mean, I want to know your thoughts on this idea, Marshall.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Like, I think it's like also like super cool that it's like partnered with the local government there, right? It's like a good example of local government making a difference. People talk about it all the time. Like, this is the perfect example of where football meets, social awareness, you could say. But I think that's a fantastic idea, especially get programs like you said, like Holy Cross, and then you get a fan like an Omar Rashawn Borja, following a Holy Cross because he's from the area. But in all seriousness, no, I do think it's a very good idea.
Yeah, like I mean, honestly, like I'm not sure why the FCS. I mean, I get the playoffs are a big deal, but why they don't really. I don't know the process with sanctioning, but I mean, for me, it seems like a slam dunk. And honestly, the Opportunity Bowl was I think it was kind of like a slam dunk in the face of the Ohio Valley Conference choosing for a spring season. I think that's kind of like what it was. It's like, hey, it's kind of like in semi-pro with the Flint Michigan Mega Bowl in the final scene. I think that's kind of the spirit of what it was. But I think Eastern Kentucky might have had a accidentally good idea.
You want to be smart. Perhaps a city like a Las Vegas would want to host some of these games, because think about it. If you can like partner these games with, I mean, I guess actually no, now that I think about it, the NCAA would never let this happen. But if you could potentially like have like sponsors of this thing, like, that are gambling related, they could definitely market this too, like within, a Las Vegas kind of network, right? And you can host the game in a warm area, one. Number two, you would get great exposure, because if you get like word out that these teams are playing and you can bet on it, I guarantee you'll draw eyeballs like everywhere in the country, right? There will be some degenerate somewhere that wants to bet on the over under on this, right? And then three, like you'll get the draws because lots of fans would want to go to a Las Vegas, right? I think that could be the perfect destination for a kind of game like this. Maybe you won't play it at the new Raiders Stadium. Maybe you're going to play it at the old UNLV Stadium. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's still a great location. And I think all the fans would absolutely love it to, be able to go to Las Vegas, be able to go down to the casinos on the weekend, right? When they're not watching the game. That'd be cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, and I think the one obstacle you mentioned, the NCAA, I'm not sure if they'd sponsor an event that becomes bigger than, their own playoffs that they sanction. But I think definitely, like, in terms of like the new gambling thing, like if there's football on TV and there's football happening, even these FCS lines happening, which I'm currently getting victimized by the James Madison Dukes by that 40-point line. I'm getting victimized. Good thing I only put $5 on it for some beer money. But yeah, no, if you put betting games out, or games to bet on, excuse me, then I think the fans will come. It's like if you build a line, the fans will come. Like Field of Dreams. If you build a line, they'll come. But I think so. The interesting thing for me is, in doing some research, I guess, for this, I don't even think it was research. Again, I think it was just me just getting bored and looking up just like pretty much every unsanctioned bowl that's like happening. As NCAA has a section in their record book for these every unsanctioned random bowl that's occurred, like some of them including like the Cement Bowl, the Fish Bowl, and I actually have a story saved. Yeah. So the Cement Bowl, interestingly enough, it was a bowl game between local teams in Pennsylvania in Allentown in the second week of December, and that went about as well as you'd think. No one wants to be in Pennsylvania in the second week of December. That's why the Liberty Bowl moved out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to Memphis. But even then, if you get a smaller town to say like, hey, come visit this random museum when you're here for like the 2 or 3 day trip, and then come watch the game, like come watch your team win a bowl game. Like I mean, I like that's what tourism is. That's the essence of tourism, even in small towns. So I don't think it has to be a big city like Las Vegas. It can be like Richmond, Kentucky, or it can be Worcester, Massachusetts, with Higgins Armory, a place that I went that was about 10 minutes away from where I went to charter school. Even like if you take advantage of historic stadiums, like there's some historic stadiums in FCS, not counting like the Ivy League ones, but some like Welcome Stadium in Dayton, Ohio. It's been around since like the 30s or the 40s. That hosted New Mexico until 2007. What was New Mexico's last bowl win, the 1961 Aviation Bowl.
Oh my God.
So I do not ask how I'm able to pull that off a recall so quick, but just know that it happened. Like,
He's going to talk that one up down bad.
yeah, no, it's like they're gonna put they're gonna put that snippet, like the video, dudes who are down bad, the down bad patrol, they're gonna be like, yeah, this dude's down bad. Talking about an Aviation Bowl and the Cement Bowl. It's like you talk about the Cement Bowl. Why don't you cement yourself in a relationship?
Oh,
But yeah, no, I think honestly, for me, I love football. I was just watching some FCS games last night and today, and I'm down for more football, especially bowl games. Bowl games they're what's good about America. It's like it's capitalism. It's the good sides of the American capitalistic system.
I'd be careful saying capitalism is good. That we don't want to alienate him.
I'm not trying to alienate myself. The good side of the American capitalistic system, where you have people buying stuff and helping the local area. I do get that there are some bad sides, and I'm not trying to alienate any of our viewers, but I will say that the bowl system brings out the good parts of the capitalist system, and it's also just one more chance for athletes to to participate in these games. And I think honestly, you should pay college athletes to play in bowl games. I'm just gonna say it. Like, it's a bold take, but I think they should do it.
I think it's like a bold take for now. I think we're seeing that start to happen, honestly. And we're getting the rejuvenation of the NCAA video game.
Yeah.
And I think they're thinking that'll coincide with, college athletes getting paid here in the next 2 years. So I don't think it's really that far out there to say, they should be paid, especially for bowl games.
Yeah, I think, again, for these small towns, they say, all right, we'll pay you $500 bonus to play in the Opportunity Bowl or out in Florida.
Tell me you wouldn't suit up and go play football for $500 right now.
I'd play for free, man. I'd put on the pads for free.
Exactly.
I miss running down on kickoffs. But yeah,
special teams here.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a hero, more of a contributor. But yeah, no.
Practice squad hero.
Yeah, practice squad. Former practice squad fullback. All 175 pounds of me at the time. Played fullback because no one else wanted to, but I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. If that, I think that kind of cements sorry, got to get away from the cement puns here. Cement bowls on my mind. I think that seals our discussion here in terms of teams in Hawaii, in terms of FCS ball in Hawaii and postseason bowl games or FCS bowl games. Marshall, do you have anything to say before we go?
I think you summed it up pretty well. I think the key takeaway here is that more football is better. More is better. And I think we have touched on that in every podcast, but I just want to say it again, more is better. I will say, keep an eye out. We might be potentially launching a new business podcast within the Between the Spikes podcast network. So keep an eye out for that. We'll let you know. We'll keep you updated.
Yeah, exactly. Some exciting stuff happening with our network. We actually paid for our first ad, so we'll see how that goes on the New Mexico State Roundup. It's only for a week because the prices are kind of steep, and this is kind of just a free time just like a free time enterprise for us. Nothing serious, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, no, more football is better. But I will say this to the NCAA: more football is better when you're not exploiting athletes. NCAA, some food for thought if you watch this NCAA offices.
Keep that in mind, or else Omar's coming for you. That's a threat. It's a direct threat.
No, not a threat. That might ruin my career as a cadet and as an officer in the future. But just a stern warning. A call.
You really got
a call.
Really? Really? Some of us are down bad. Some of us are down bad.
It's not a threat, but it's a call to it's a I guess ethos, a call to ethos, I guess, to an ethical appeal. It's been a long time since I've studied those appeals.
Okay.
That's all it is, NCAA.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. And with that, peace, love, and soul, everyone.